Now, staying with China. Earlier this Tuesday, it held a funeral ceremony, a state memorial for Jiang Zemin, the former president of China, who died last Wednesday at the age of 96. The timing of this ceremony was interesting. It came amid domestic turmoil within China, with the police still deployed on the streets to deter protests against zero-COVID rules. So the idea behind holding this ceremony was to shift the spotlight from protests to China's so-called dream of national rejuvenation, a dream that Xi Jinping himself wasted no time in reminding Chinese citizens about. We'll get there in a bit. First, let's talk about the ceremony. Where was it held? At the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, a state building used for official meetings of the CCP. For the funeral, it was draped entirely in black, as were all Chinese leaders in attendance. The ceremony began with 3 minutes of silence. Attendees bowed their heads in tribute. Watch this. As Chinese lawmakers stood in silence, sirens wailed out across the rest of China to remind people about the ceremony. Residential areas, flyovers, metro stations, restaurants, the sirens could be heard everywhere. It truly was a surreal sight, and a highly orchestrated one at that. Reports say even the Chinese state media went black and white, with TV anchors awash in praises for Jiang Zemin. Back in Beijing, all eyes were on Xi Jinping, on what he was about to say, and much to the expectations, the Chinese president didn't disappoint with his performance. He delivered a 50-minute speech filled with grief, melancholy, and an impressive amount of propaganda. To start with, Xi Jinping drew parallels between the era of Jiang Zemin to the prevailing political situation in the country. He said, Zemin ensured the CCP's survival from quote-unquote political storms in the 1980s and 90s, a clear reference to the chaos which unfolded after the Tiananmen crackdown. He further added that Zemin proactively engaged in quote-unquote diplomatic struggles which Xi Jinping said upheld China's independence, dignity and security. And lastly, he cited Jiang's words on possessing a heroic spirit that crushes all enemies. At the end of it all, one was left wondering if the speech was a tribute to Jiang Zemin or an effort by Xi Jinping to blow his own trumpet through him. Take a look.
20世纪80年代末 90年代初
In the late 1980s and early 1990s, serious political storms occurred at home and abroad, and global socialism experienced severe complications. Some Western countries imposed so-called sanctions on China.
在关键时刻具有做出
He had the extraordinary courage to make bold decisions and the great courage to carry out theoretical innovation at critical moments.
巨大勇气。江泽民同志强调
Comrade Jiang Zemin emphasized that our party is leading the people in a great struggle to build socialist modernization and inevitably will encounter many complex situations. The severe situation at home and abroad and the confrontation and struggle between different social systems and different ideological systems often test every member of our party. We should have the heroism to overwhelm all enemies. Man cannot lower his noble head.
You heard that. Political storms gripped China in the 1980s. Zemin had great courage and made bold decisions. We should have the heroism to overwhelm all enemies. How should we perceive these statements? Was Xi Jinping trying to mourn Jiang Zemin or celebrate himself and his policies? because everything he says bears an eerie resemblance to the current state of affairs. A political storm has gripped China in the form of zero-COVID protests. Xi Jinping is making bold and draconian decisions to end the ongoing protests. At the same time, he's trying to overwhelm his perceived enemies, like Japan and South Korea, through diplomatic overtures and incursions. So who exactly was Xi Jinping talking about? Jiang Zemin and his policies? Or himself and his own plans for China? By all means, he hijacked the ceremony to celebrate his own achievements. What he said next settled all doubts about this. Listen in.
新征程上，我们一定要保持只争朝夕。
On the new journey, we must uphold the fighting spirit for every single day and strive to move forward regardless of difficulties and dangers. We must grasp the historical initiative, enhance the morale, backbone and confidence of the whole party and the people of all ethnic groups. We do not believe in heresies and fear evil forces and yield to pressure. We will overcome all difficulties and challenges on the way forward.
Uphold the fighting spirit. Move forward regardless of dangers. Do not believe in fear and evil forces. How again was this a tribute to Jiang Zemin? My point is simple. Xi Jinping used this farewell ceremony as a distraction from the protests. His unwillingness to give in to demonstrations and his ultimate authority on public life. His message was simple. Mourn Jiang Zemin all you want, but do not expect things to change. So to put it simply, what was supposed to be a state funeral ended up being a propaganda ceremony, a ceremony to remind Chinese citizens about the might of the Communist Party. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.